Hello, welcome to Brian's Budget Garage. Well, today, actually last couple days, I didn't film a lot of this. Today we're replacing the fuel pump in a Crown Victoria. It's 2006. The first thing you want to do is actually unplug the battery, because it's an electric fuel pump in the fuel tank. You don't want any sparks. So unplug the battery, you're safe. The issue with the Crown Victoria is that this is the gas tank. The gas tank isn't underneath the trunk. The gas tank is between the trunk and the axle, rear axle. So there's a lot of issues with the spacing here, and it's sort of a pain in the butt to get it out. So I've actually replaced it. I didn't actually film all of it, but I was going to show what I did. So it's held on by these straps here. Okay. The problem is up here you can't see it, but there's a stud. I'll show that in a minute. There's a stud that gets broken off, and they tighten it in and they break off half of it. Why they do that, I have no idea. There's no reason to break half of it off except for to make you come to the dealer so you can replace the power or the fuel pump again. So once they break it off, now this strap is too short to actually reach. Okay, so let me show you what I've done to fix that. So you got to drop the tank and get the fuel pump out, which, alright, hold on, let me get a good view of it. Again, it's jammed way up in there. So that plate right there, that round plate, is what needs to be removed. Some people have been able to get them out without pulling the tank. The way the wiring is, it's just a real pain in the butt. I decided to pull the tank anyway. Okay, so you've got to pull the tank so you can pull this plate and then get the whole pump out. The problem is pulling the tank is an issue. Alright, so you can see that bolt up there. That bolt is snapped off after they tighten it up, which means the mount here doesn't work anymore. There's a pin that goes through this metal piece. Now I've shaved it off because I needed to put a thicker piece of metal in here. So there's a pin, and then that pin went through the end of the strap. Let me show you the one that's finished so you can actually see better. So here's the one that's finished. So here's where the pin connects, or a pin holds the strap. Here's where the pin went through the strap, and it used to go right here. So you can't quite get it as tight, but it's still pretty tight. It ain't going nowhere. Okay, so what I did is I used a U-bolt square bracket. I cut the bracket so that it fits in here. You can sort of see that it's cut right there and there, so that it's a little thinner, so it fits in here. Turned it sideways, and then I put nuts and washers. And the nice thing about this is this tightens up as tight as you want it. You first get the bolt up on the other end of here, and then you come back to here and tighten this as much as you can to get it as tight as you want to tighten the tank onto the car. So that's what I'm doing right here. Still working on it. Once you do that, there is another issue with this. Is up here, the plug actually is underneath that hole. Lovely design of the engineers decided that, hey, let's put this plug right here, which is your plug to your gas tank. It was way up under here. Okay, you can't even do anything with it under here. So I popped it loose, and it's going to be plugged in and zip tied right there. I hate engineers who've never worked on a car in the day in their life. It really irks me. So, and then there's where the fuel goes in, and of course they have the standard locks there for the fuel line, that the regular Ford locks. So you have to slide something into there to release it. It's O-ring based. So you end up sliding this little doofenshmirtzy here into there, unlocking it, and it slides out. So the other thing you have to deal with when you pull this out is the fuel filler. Fuel filler goes into right there, which you can't quite see. I'll zoom there, right there. And that fuel filler goes over to there inside of the, hold on, it's not seeing it right, goes into that inside of the fender. And so you got 4 bolts there, you've got 4 bolts right here, and then the whole thing slides out of that rubber grommet right there. Okay, so you do have to take that out too. So what we're gonna do is tighten up these bolts, pulling this thing in, and then we're gonna pull the nuts back off, put some more washers. We'll probably need about twice as many washers. Tighten the nuts again, 2 times should be about it, and it'll suck the whole thing in. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. Make sure it's going the right way. Do it one here, one. Should be pulling in the. There's a little bit too much pressure on this. Let's let it slip. Now you can see that it's moving pretty good. Just about to the end of my socket. I'll pull these off, put some more washers on. Now you can actually release this, which won't move anymore because it's now pretty tight. So that brought the bar almost all the way up to where it needed to be. It's maybe 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, not even quite a 1/2 inch, I would say, compared to what it was originally. So now, to make sure they're good and tight, and then I'm going to put a lock nut on the back so that it starts bending that, so that's about as much as I want to do. Now I'm going to put a lock nut to make sure these things don't wander off on me. If you don't put a lock nut, this is a car, it doesn't vibrate. So I put a lock nut to make sure it's not going to come back off ever. But this way, if I ever do have to do it again, which probably won't, it's 150,000 miles on this car, probably won't need to redo the fuel pump on this car before it wears out. So you should be able to see now on the camera how that worked. So I pulled that bar into where it needed to go, and that's basically how I now mount it. See, it's tight, not moving. So I wanted to show you the old pump. This is the old pump. It actually sits in the car like this. It has your sensor for fuel level. It's got the actual pump, which is went bad itself. You can't just buy the pump, you have to buy the whole thing. It's about 300 bucks. So this pump was bad. I actually tested it, sure enough, doesn't run anymore. It comes, there's 2 wires. This pigtail plugs into the car, which was up underneath that frame piece, between the frame and the body. This goes to your pressure sensor for emissions stuff. It goes up on the top. This is the part that would be really hard to remove without removing the tank, because that jams between the body and the tank itself. Then of course this is your actual hose for the fuel out, for your pressure line going to the engine. So this hose you actually plug back in. This is actually for the system that goes for the fire suppression system, which is a good thing. You don't want things to catch fire. Something they added to make cars safer, I believe in 2002 or something like that. So this one just pushes in, and then you push this yellow piece in, and it slides in and slides out, pops back in. Okay, so it's just a quick little ring. So you push this yellow ring in, and the whole thing slides back in. It's just a pressure fit. This is the main plug for the fuel pump itself, and again it is plugs into that plug there, up in the thing. I'm going to actually just zip tie it together. I'm not going to put it back under the frame. That's stupid. I hate the fact that it's under the frame because you can't get to it. They put this thing together with the frame off the body, so it's easy to them, but once you get, I don't know about you, but I don't want to pull the frame off, or the body off the frame, just to replace the fuel pump. It's stupid. Then I will plug in that other pipe. So start with plugging in the fuel line. Take off the little red thing. I hope you can see this. Then you take the fuel line, slide it onto the new pipe till it clicks, and it's on. And then I'm going to zip tie it later. Okay, I don't know if you caught that. I put this fuel line onto that pipe. You heard it click. Then there's a clip here which you want to clip in that helps keep the thing together, not sliding. At least that's technically what it's supposed to do. Don't know if it really does much, honestly. Okay, now that you've got the tank in, you need to actually be able to hook up all the tubing for the emissions junk. If you don't hook it up, you're going to get an evaporative leak error. You might even spill gas. So that there's a hose on the passenger side. Again, there's no tire here, so it makes it easy to get into. That hose there is part of the emissions. You had to unhook it. In fact, this whole thing is probably loose to get it back in, so you need to actually make sure this clamp is hooked back onto the tank. Not sure you can see me do that because my big fat hand, you can't get in there. So you're gonna have to make sure that clamp's on there. Make sure this clamp is on here for the wire. It's really tight. Make sure this hose is on this doomafidgey, right? So you need to hook up all that to make sure that you don't have evaporative issues later, okay? Because the computer will error on it. You won't pass emissions and all that fun stuff. So you need to hook that up. This is the filler spout. It's the one I pulled out. It was really difficult to get out. There was really no grease on that, so it was really hard to pull through that rubber washer. The boot sort of dead. I'll have to figure that out. That keeps dirt out of the trunk. And the other issue I have with it is this guy right here. This used to be right there. It snapped off when I pulled it out. This is part of the emission system, so this little valve is actually supposed to stop fuel if you turn the car over on its head. So I might have to actually get a new one. We're going to try to use it this way. If it gives me an error, then I'll deal with it later. But I'm going to put it in. So to put it in, I'm going to slather it with grease. Wipe my hands off. So I want to put grease all over this thing so that when it goes in, it just slides right in and slides right out if I need to replace it. So this whole thing needs to be covered in grease. Will it come off in the gasoline? Yeah, so what? Slight bit of smoke, not bad. It won't be long. But this will make it easier to put into the hole when I get there. I'm gonna try to put this tube into that hole. It's basically this rubber washer, the rubber seal here it's in pretty good shape, so I didn't feel the need to replace it. But you gotta slide this whole thing in. That's why I greased it up, so that it slides in by like a foot into the tank. So there's no easy way to do it. You just get yourself situated and just sort of start shoving, and hopefully it'll go in. I have it all started sliding in. Again, the grease helps a lot. I'm eventually going to have to start turning it. This pipe needs to connect to here, so I need to turn this thing up. But first thing I need to do is get it as far into the tank as possible. And it's hitting. Everything always hits. Gotta move everything out of the way. In fact, the light's hitting now too. I have to move my light. Twist it, and gotta get it in the hole. There. Now I pull it back out a little bit so it lines up here. So this has got to line up here now. Can't quite see here. Come on. There we go. So now that pulls that thing up in the top. That's where it's going to sit, and then you just take all this line into here, and the only thing that holds it in is these screws and these screws, back and forward. Other than that, it's just a rubber seal. Alright, now we tighten the top ones. You have to make sure this plate's on, because that metal plate is what keeps everything from falling apart. You're just tightening the plastic here, so not too tight. There you go. You don't want to strip things out. It's just one last thing about the fuel filler spout. When you want to do the fuel filter or fuel pump, then it's because the fuel pump's bad. Well, when the fuel pump's bad, you can't siphon or you can't pump the fuel out of the tank. I had a half tank left over in this thing, and I needed to siphon it. So I needed to put it into those cans so I could take down the fuel tank. A full fuel tank is actually very heavy. A half full fuel tank is half heavy. So I needed to siphon out that fuel. The problem is if you pull off the cap and try to siphon out of the standard fuel filler tube, it's not going to work. Because at the end, I showed you that valve that's at the end. You can't shove a siphoning hose into the tank. It stops it. There's no way to get the siphoning hose in there. So what I did is once I got the fuel filler tube out, then I was able to put a siphoning hose into the tank and siphon out all the gas. So that's one way to do it. Other people have done it differently, but you can't really use the pump because the pump is bad. That's why you're replacing it. So that's something to think about before you start this, to see if you can get rid of as much fuel as possible before you start this.